Hey everybody, it's Jimmy. So today's video is about buying an older house. I'm talking about a house from the 40s, the 50s, maybe the early 60s, you know, the pros and cons. Like, I've done a lot of inspections lately and of homes from the 50s, and they're really nice. They're cute and vintage and they have character and stuff. But there's some cons to buying houses like that also. So we're going to go over some pros and cons today of buying an old house or buying a newer house that's less than 20 years old. So let's get started. In the meantime, if you like this kind of video, do me a favor, subscribe, hit the bell notification. It greatly helps the channel and it's greatly appreciated. So let's get started. Okay, we already touched on one, character. Those homes are beautiful, especially like a home I was in recently. You know, had a glass knob and everything, and you know, doorknobs and everything, and the kitchen, and just the way it is. It's just, it gives it character, you know, that a lot of newer houses don't have these days. For some reason, it seems nice and vintage, and a lot of people like that. Some people like more modern stuff, but one of the pros is if you like character, going with an older house is definitely a pro. Here's a con. The electrical system on an older house from the 40s and 50s is not up to today's standards. So a lot of them don't have proper grounding in the outlets. Yes, you could upgrade everything, but sometimes what they do is they put new outlets in, but they don't ground them correctly. The panel might be old, there might be cloth wiring in the walls, because to rewire a whole house, you know, from the 40s and 50s, it's a lot of work. And they might not have done it. They might have just done, you know, the electrical panel and the outlets. So you really need a good home inspector that could inspect the electrical system and check the outlets to make sure they're properly grounded and stuff. So the con is outdated wiring. All right, let's go to a pro of buying an older house. Older houses seem like they're more established neighborhoods. So bigger properties, you know, because back then people had room to grow. And as time went on, especially the new houses now, you pretty much could hand somebody a salt pepper shaker, you know, from one window to the other. But back then it wasn't like that. So, and you have the big oak trees that could be good and bad, but you have, you know, all the shrubbery, everything's established, you know, for a very long time. So you know what it's going to look like. And in a newer neighborhood, things aren't as established. So you don't know what it's going to look like 10, 15 years from now. So maturity of the neighborhood is a pro on an older home. It's hot. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning and it's already 90 degrees. But anyways, let's keep going. So maintenance costs. Maintenance costs on an older house is a lot more than a new house. So basically, there's probably a lot more wood and that, you know, that needs to be replaced. You know, the windows could be older, you know, so there's deficiencies, including plumbing. So, you know, it might have old plumbing, you know, so you might have to do some plumbing work on top of the electrical work, you know, replace rotten wood because it's just older and it needs maintenance. So that's a con. So let's go to a pro. Usually on older homes, they're cheaper than newer homes. So if you're looking for a deal, you know, buying a house from the 40s and 50s and early 60s, you might find a better price for a home than compared to a newer home. So that's a pro. Let's talk about a con. The rooms, at least my experience, and everybody, you know, correct me below, but the rooms and living area just seem a lot smaller. It seems like they built the rooms really small, and the living rooms and the kitchens back then compared to today's standards. So, but if you're not looking for a lot of space, it's fine, but just the house itself just seems smaller on the inside. Lower ceilings, you know, less closets. So take that into consideration. Depending on, you know, what you need, you might be limited on space. Okay, here's a con. So older homes, a lot less energy efficient than newer homes. You know, because of today's standards, and from air conditioning to insulation in the attic, to the windows, to the doors, they're a lot more efficient. So you'll find that the older houses are drafty. You know, they're just not nearly as energy efficient as today's standards. So think about that when you buy an older house, that you might have to upgrade it to make it more energy efficient. Now, did they build the houses really good back then? I think so. You know, I think they built them really good back then. But they weren't thinking about energy efficiency when it comes to when they were building them. So today's standards is everything. So a lot of new houses, they do energy tests at the end of the construction, what's called a blower test, blower door test, to make sure it's energy efficient. They have, you know, double pane windows or impact windows, high energy efficient windows, high energy efficient air conditioners, all that stuff. So buying an older house, you're gonna have less efficiency compared to a new house. Okay, let's talk about a pro. Historic, it could be historic significant. You know, it might, where it's located, or what kind of home it is, or who owned it before. It could be, you know, people like that stuff. The house has some history compared to a piece of farmland that they cleared out, put roads in, and built brand new houses. So think about that one. So historical significance. So well, you know, while we're on that, let's talk about another pro. And I wrote it down, yeah, because I checked it. Less competition. A lot of older homes have less competition till newer homes. So if you're looking for a home, and you know, a lot of people want to say, hey, I want to buy a house that's about 5-10 years old, you know, but if you go in and say, hey, you know what, I'm okay with a house that's 50-60 years old, you might have better luck of finding a house than somebody who's looking for a house that's like 10 years old in your price range. So keep that in mind. Here's a con. So there's things on older houses that you have to be aware of. I'll mention a couple, like asbestos. You know, there might be asbestos shingles, there might be asbestos siding. You know, it could be lead paint. You know, hazards that, you know, you might have to deal with in the future, especially if you want to renovate. You know, there's asbestos tiles on floors, you know. So they use asbestos a lot and lead paint a lot, so keep that in mind. So have somebody, if you're buying an older house, if possible, have it tested for lead paint and asbestos. Check the ductwork up in the attic, make sure it's not asbestos. And I'm not saying, listen, I'm not an expert in asbestos, but it's known that if you play around with it and you start disturbing it, it's not healthy for you. So keep that in mind when buying an older house. All right, let's talk about a con. Just like, you know, we said it was a benefit for you, it was easier for you to find because a lot of people aren't looking for an older house. It might be the same if you want to sell the house. So there might be a selling challenge to it. So there's pros and cons to that. When you're buying it, it's a pro. When you're selling it, it can be a con, because a lot of people might not be looking for an older home like that. So keep that in mind. Also, accessibilities. So the older houses sometimes are built off the beaten path compared to modern day houses built in subdivisions or in new neighborhoods to make sure that there's road access and everything. But I've seen some houses that were older from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and I'm like, how do I get there? Go down this dirt road, make a right at the rock, go over that little bridge, and it's right there. That little wooden bridge. I'm not kidding you either. So think about that. Accessibility might be a little more difficult than a house that's built, you know, currently. Okay, so internet wiring, you know, so So technology's in the house. Obviously, it's not a smart house. You know, you don't have wires built into the house for speakers and internet and smart lights and alarm systems and all that stuff. None of that existed back then. So technology integration is non-existent in those old houses. So if you want to put smart things in, like run internet lines throughout the house and speaker lines, you know, you're gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way. Make holes, hire somebody, and just run the lines, because they didn't exist. A lot of homes being built now, before they even put up the drywall, you know, they put those lines in. Anyways, that's today's video. Greatly appreciate it. If you like this kind of content, do me a favor. Consider subscribing and hit the bell notification and like the video. It greatly helps the channel, and I greatly appreciate it. Now it's hot. I'm gonna go and jump in the pool. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.